Hey, welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at something pretty iconic for American teenagers. Prom.
Right.
Think fancy outfits, maybe limos, big expectations. A formal dance marking the end of the school year.
Yeah.
Now, if you're listening from outside the United States, this whole idea might seem, well, a bit uniquely American.
Exactly. And that's really our goal today for anyone tuning in from elsewhere. We want to unpack what prom actually is, where it, came from historically, and maybe why it holds such a big place in U.S. culture.
Okay.
We've looked at some historical articles, even a video transcript, to try and give you a good picture.
Great. So let's start right there. What is prom exactly?
Well, the word prom itself is short for promenade. It's French originally.
Promenade, like a walk.
Yeah, pretty much. A leisurely walk or like a place for walking. You also hear it in ballet and even American square dancing for certain moves.
Interesting.
But by the late 1800s here in the U.S., prom started to mean this specific thing, a formal dance, usually for high school students.
Right. So not just any school dance then. What makes it different?
Well, it definitely started out simpler, often just, in the school gym at the end of the year. But it's really evolved. I mean, it's practically an industry now. You've got the formal wear tuxes, gowns.
Right, the whole outfit thing.
Yeah, and then limos, flowers, corsages, boutonnieres, photographers, these really elaborate invitations people call proposals.
Proposals.
Yeah, like big public ways of asking someone. And then after parties, too. It gets pretty involved. There was a survey, maybe back in 2015, that put the average cost per student at like $919.
Wow, for one night.
Yep. And a decent chunk of that was apparently just on the proposal part. It shows you how big a deal it's become.
That is a lot of money. So where did this all start? It feels a bit extra, maybe, for just a dance?
Well, that's where the history gets kind of fascinating. This idea of marking that shift, young people becoming adults, it goes way, way back.
Like how far back?
Think ancient Greece, their symposia, or Roman convivia. These were basically formal gatherings for elite young men, signaling they were joining adult society.
Okay, so banquets and things.
Right. And then later, much later, in 18th, 19th century Europe, you had these very formal aristocratic dances, debutante balls.
Wow, the debutante balls.
Exactly. They were coming out ceremonies for young women from wealthy families, introducing them to society.
So prom is like the American version of that, but maybe for everyone.
That's a great way to put it. American proms started popping up in the late 19th century. Some think they grew out of these promenade concerts at fancy colleges, Ivy League schools where people dressed up and danced.
Okay.
We actually have records, like an 1879 Harvard newspaper mentioning a junior prom and a diary entry from an Amherst student in 1895 about going to a prom at Smith College. There's even a photo from Smith that year.
Wow, so it has quite a history.
It does. And one sociologist, Amy Best, had this really interesting take. She called high school proms a democratized version of the debutante ball.
Democratized, meaning?
Meaning it gave kids from all sorts of backgrounds, not just the super rich, a chance to have that coming out moment. To dress up, feel fancy, participate in this formal ritual, kind of transcending class for a night.
I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So how did it get from those early college dances to the huge event it is today?
Well, it really started gaining steam in the early 1930s. By 1936, there was actually a guidebook called the Junior-Senior Prom.
A guidebook.
Yeah. And you see signs of it getting fancier early on, like a Stanford prom in 1934 apparently had this huge miniature replica of San Francisco as decoration.
Whoa.
But the real golden age, people often say, was the late 40s and the 50s. Teenagers were becoming this distinct group, consumers.
Right. The birth of the teenager.
Exactly. And proms started moving out of gyms into hotels, nicer places. And that's when crowning the prom king and queen became like the big tradition.
Yeah, you see that everywhere in movies.
Yeah.
Which brings me to prom seems huge in American pop culture, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's deeply embedded. You have these little anecdotes like President Kennedy quickly stopping by a high school prom in '63.
Really? JFK?
Yep. And President Ford's daughter, Susan, actually held her senior prom at the White House in 1975.
No way. At the White House?
Yeah. So it's definitely part of the cultural fabric, though it wasn't always smooth sailing. Prom popularity dipped a bit in the 60s and 70s.
Why is that?
Probably reflecting all the social upheaval, political stuff going on then. But then it came roaring back in the 80s.
Ah, the 80s movies.
Exactly. Movies like Pretty in Pink, Footloose, they really cemented that image of prom for a whole new generation.
Those films definitely shaped how a lot of people see it. But I know there have been some some difficult parts to prom's history, too.
Yes, and it's really important we talk about that. Like, in the Jim Crow South, segregated proms were common for a long time.
Right, separate proms for black and white students.
Sadly, yes. And believe it or not, there were schools fighting over desegregating proms as recently as, like, 2013, 2008 in some places.
That recent, wow. So it's not just fun and games. It reflects bigger societal issues.
It really does. It shows how these traditions can mirror both the good and the bad in society.
Okay, so thinking about all this, the history, the culture, how do experts kind of frame prom? Is it more than just a party?
Yeah, many sociologists look at it as a kind of secular or non-religious rite of passage.
Rite of Passage.
Yeah, drawing on ideas from this anthropologist, Arnold van Gennep, he talked about rituals having 3 stages. There's separation, like getting ready for prom, setting it apart from normal life.
Okay, the preparation.
Then the liminal stage, that's the prom itself. It's this in-between time where teens are sort of trying on more adult roles.
Transition phase.
Right. And finally, reincorporation, going back to normal life afterwards, but maybe seen slightly differently, a step closer to adulthood.
Huh. That's an interesting way to look at it.
And you can kind of see how those prom movies often play with these ideas, you know? It's a Wonderful Life, Grease, Pretty in Pink again. The prom scene often becomes this moment where characters face choices or where society's values are either challenged or reinforced.
So the movies use prom to say something about American life.
Often, yeah. It's a really useful setting for that kind of commentary.
So bringing it to today, what's modern prom like in the U.S.? Has its meaning shifted?
I think the emphasis might have changed a bit. A lot of the traditions are still there, but maybe there's more focus now on just, you know, having an amazing, fun night, escapism, celebration.
More casual, maybe?
In some ways, yeah. You see more selfies, maybe less of that intense rivalry between schools that used to be a thing. But it's definitely still a major event.
Still a big milestone.
Absolutely. It still really marks that end of high school, the end of adolescence for many, that visible step towards whatever comes next.
Okay, so summing up, prom started simpler, evolved from maybe college events and debutante ideas into this huge, elaborate American high school tradition.
Right.
It's got deep cultural roots, became a kind of rite of passage, shows up all over pop culture, and even reflects some serious social issues throughout its history.
Exactly. And while maybe the focus shifts slightly over time, it remains this really significant marker for American teens.
It really does.